Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Salim Akhtar Malik, your host at the Observation Post channel. On this channel, I discuss with you issues of national and international importance, defense and security matters, as well as important events from military history. You can interact with me on my channel by giving your views and your comments, which I hold very important, as your views and comments help me in fine tuning my talks, which I deliver to you from time to time. And you can also connect with me on Twitter, where my address is at Salim Akhtar 53. Now, in this session, I'll be talking to you about the convergence of Indian and Israeli occupational strategies against the Kashmiris and the Palestinians, respectively. There will be some repetition in this video, which is necessary to maintain the continuity and the cohesiveness of the narrative which I am going to present to you. And it is also to facilitate the viewers who had missed my earlier videos on the subject. So, this is probably the third video which I am releasing. The third one will be released today. These are about the clashes between the Palestinians and Israelis, which started some 2 weeks ago and which have now flared up into a warlike situation. I say warlike situation because it is a one-sided war where the Palestinians have their backs tied down, whereas the Israelis are allowed to act with impunity in destroying the Palestinian homes, lives, as well as infrastructure. And in this Israeli aggression, the United States and the European Union countries, including India, are supporting Israel. Talking about India, it is playing on both sides of the wicket as it suits Indian strategy against the Kashmiris. So Indians are also following almost the same strategy against the Kashmiris, which the Palestinians are pursuing against the unarmed Palestinians. As I said, it started almost 2 weeks ago when Israelis shut down the Al-Aqsa Mosque, something which they do occasionally. So they shut down the Al-Aqsa Mosque for prayers by the Palestinians. And there was also another cause. Israelis had announced the construction of a Jewish settlement at Al Jara, which is located some distance away from Al Aqsa Mosque. Al Jara is an Arab, that is a Palestinian village, and the Israelis said they would construct a new Jewish settlement there, as a result of which the original inhabitants, that is the Palestinians, will have to vacate their homes and lands from the village. This is something again which the Israelis have been doing since the last half a century. And the Palestinians, they protested as well as they appealed to the Israeli Supreme Court against the draconian decision and order by the Israeli government, but it was a given that the Israeli Supreme Court would, as it had been doing in the past, give a verdict in favor of the Jewish settlers. So, long and short of it, this area, which comprises East Jerusalem, West bank of River Jordan, and the Gaza Strip, which is a small strip of land between Egypt and Israel. These areas were captured by Israel during the 1967 war. At that time, Gaza was under Egyptian rule, whereas the west bank of River Jordan and East Jerusalem were controlled by the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. So Israel invaded and captured these areas, and since then, these areas in which almost 5 million Palestinians live, rather more than this number, these areas are under the control of and illegal occupation of Israel. So soon after the war, that is the 1967 war, Israel had annexed East Jerusalem and declared it as a united city and the capital of the eternal capital of Israel. And it was, they said, not negotiable. It was non negotiable. As for the west bank of River Jordan and the Gaza Strip, they are following a comprehensive policy of encroachment into Arab lands, that is the Palestinian lands, since 1967. So their policy is two-pronged. They want to force the Palestinians living in the west bank of River Jordan to leave Palestine altogether. They are making their life so difficult as to make them one day realize that they cannot live inside the area controlled by Israel, and they would like to then emigrate to the neighboring Arab states, either to various neighboring Arab states, which are Egypt, the Kingdom of Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. But even if the Palestinians want to emigrate to one of the Arab countries bordering on Israel, these Arab countries will not accept them as their citizens. So the Palestinians living inside Israel are orphans in their own country, that is Palestine. So much for the west bank of River Jordan. The second strategy of Israel is, if they cannot force the Palestinians living in the west bank of River Jordan, they should force them to get squeezed into Gaza Strip. Now, Gaza Strip, as I said, is a narrow strip of land between Egypt and Israel. Till 1967, it was under Egyptian control, and since 1967, it is controlled by Israel. So the world says that the Gaza Strip is a huge prison into which more than 2 million Palestinians have been boxed. And this box is surrounded from all sides by Israel. The so called Palestine National Authority, which was formed in 1994 as a result of the Oslo Peace Accord, does not exercise any control over its airspace, that is, the airspace over Gaza. And it does not have any jurisdiction over its territorial sea waters also. So the Palestine National Authority is a non-entity. It is an entity which does not have any attribute of statehood. So these are the two options on which Israelis are working, either to force the Arabs, that is the Palestinian Arabs, to leave the country, leave Palestine and get settled in one of the Arab countries around Israel, or get squeezed into the Gaza Strip. Now, Gaza already has 2 million Palestinians, and there are more than 3 million Palestinians living in the west bank of River Jordan. So, if those are also expelled, those Palestinians living in the west bank of River Jordan are also expelled from the west bank and forced to get squeezed into the Gaza Strip, there will be more than 5 million Palestinians living within an area of 635 kilometers, that is 141 square miles. So, this is the state. And the Israelis have been saying since long that there is only one state, that is, there is only space for a single state between the sea and the river, by which they mean between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. They are now exploiting the situation where the Gaza Strip, the Palestinians in Gaza Strip are being helped by Hamas. Now, Hamas is a Iranian proxy organization, militant organization, which is based in South Lebanon. And Hamas occasionally keeps firing rockets into Israeli territory. Simultaneously, the Arabs, that is the Palestinian Arabs living in Gaza Strip, as an act of desperation, also keep firing rockets into Israel proper. Now, these rockets, I had been saying, are but an apology to the word rocket. These are essentially steel or iron pipes into which they put a mixture of sugar and chemical fertilizer, weld it on both the sides, and thereafter fire it like a piece of firework. Such a rocket has more nuisance value than destructive power. Since the eruption of recent hostilities, not more than 10 Israelis have been killed as a result of the rocket attacks. Whereas by this morning, 227 Palestinians, including more than 61 children, Palestinian children, had been killed by Israeli bombing of the Gaza Strip. Now, this is the situation. So, the situation where the Palestinians and Hamas fire rockets into Israeli territory, they are not causing any destruction to Israel. However, they give Israel an excuse that it is under attack from Hamas and the Palestinians, and as such, it has the right to bomb the Palestinians in self-defense. And in this, the, the Israelis are supported by the United States, the European Union countries, as well as India, where I say, as I also already told you, that Indians also have their axe to grind in Kashmir, where they are treating the Kashmiris, the unarmed Kashmiris, in the same manner as the Palestinians are being treated by the Israelis in the Gaza Strip. This was the situation in the West Bank of River Jordan as well as the Gaza Strip. Israelis also say that if any state, any Palestinian state has to be established, it is to be established in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, not in the West Bank of River Jordan. And this area, that is the West Bank of River Jordan, was till 1967 part of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, as it had liberated the West Bank of River Jordan during the 1948 war between Arabs and Israel. Now we come to India. India has the same ambitions as the Israelis have against the Palestinians. So Indians are treating much worse the Kashmiris, which are living under the yoke of Indian occupation since 1947. Sometime back, Modi revoked the two articles, that is Article 370 and Article 35A of the Indian Constitution, which granted, though cosmetically, limited self-rule to the Kashmiris, as well as prevented the Indian citizens from gaining citizenship of the state, that is the Indian held state, as well as buying property there. With the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, the Indians living in the states within the Indian Union can now establish their businesses inside the held state, buy property, and gain citizenship of the state. So, for this purpose, Modi has trifurcated the hitherto united, that was our state was in one piece till the abrogation of 370 and 35A. The state of Jammu and Kashmir, which was under the Indian occupation, has been trifurcated into three union territories, and these are Jammu, Kashmir Valley, and Ladakh. By doing so, the Indians think and they aim at breaking the cohesion of the Kashmiris and aiming at preventing them from waging a united struggle, which they had been waging and are still waging against the brutal Indian occupation. They think that they can, by fragmenting by fragmenting the state, prevent the Kashmiris from waging a concerted freedom struggle against the Indian occupation. Now, this fragmentation has also taken place in the west bank of River Jordan, where the Israelis have peppered the Jordan Valley with the with the number of Israeli settlements, that is, Jewish settlements, which are in hundreds. They have created these Jewish settlements and then surrounded the nearby Palestinian villages and towns and converted them and forced them into Bantustan, what they call Bantustans. Now, Bantustan is a term which was used for the apartheid South Africa. Bantustan was a territory. The word was used for a territory, that is a black territory, which was surrounded from all sides by the white settlers. So, same the Israelis have done in the west bank of River Jordan. They have isolated the Palestinian towns and villages and created Bantustans, thereby aiming at slowly suffocating these Palestinian settlements and forcing the occupants to leave them. And as I said, either get settled abroad or get squeezed into the Gaza Strip. So this is what Indians are also doing. They have fragmented the state of Jammu and Kashmir into 3 union territories with a view to prevent them from waging a concerted struggle against the Indian occupation. But even as the Palestinians have failed, even as they have failed to kill the Palestinians' spirit to wage a national liberation struggle, similarly, Indians are failing and they will ultimately fail completely in preventing the Kashmiris from waging an independence struggle against the Indian occupation. So, in both the cases, in Palestine also, both the Palestinians and Israelis are bleeding. Similarly, the Indian occupation forces as well as Kashmiris will continue bleeding in the Indian held Kashmir. And this will go on till sanity prevails. Indians, if they have their way, if their wish is granted, would like to occupy Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, which are under Pakistani control, and they would like to make these areas also part of their union. But India lacks the conventional punch to hack away these areas from Pakistan, and this adds to the frustrations of India, and it keeps subjecting the Kashmiris to atrocities. A final word is about the Arab neighbors of Palestine. Now, all these countries which border on Israel, they have modern armies. You can say that Jordan does not have a very strong army, but the Egyptian army is equipped with modern weapons and they have more aircraft in their air force than do PAF have. Likewise, the other Arab states like the Saudi Arabian Kingdom as well as United Arab Emirates, though they do not border on Israel, they have more modern weapons and equipment as compared with what Pakistan army has. So if they want, and they can, without waging a war against Israel, if they only redeploy their forces in areas where they can threaten Israel, Israel will think twice before continuing with its atrocities and with bombing with impunity the Palestinian lives and property in the Gaza Strip. But they are not willing to even do such a thing as redeploying their forces to threaten Israel. And in Pakistan, we think that Pakistan army should wage a war against Israel by leaving its defensive position along the line of control in Kashmir and along the borders, international borders with Afghanistan and Iran, which are continuously under threat from Afghanistan, Iran, as well as India. So, this is all what I wanted to say in this session. See you in the next session with a new topic. Till then, bye bye.